he died, he was going to be absent from the body, but present with the Lord. So he's going to be in some kind of heaven. We call it paradise because of the story of the rich man and Lazarus, and because of what Jesus said on the cross. And that's kind of a separate place, but it's not a separate place from the presence of God. It's a separate place from the eternal heaven, I think. So that's what we talked about last week, and a little bit about how that will work at the second coming. Today, let's go to just a few more questions or things that people believe are in the Bible. One is about the mansions. We get asked some of these questions on Know Your Bible. We get asked about, there really going to be mansions in heaven? What's that going to be like? And we sing a song about that. We want a gold one that's silver lined. And Jesus, in one translation anyway, did mention mansions. John 13 and 14, he's talking to the apostles, and he said he's going away, and he said that in my Father's house, or my Father's place, are many mansions, and Father's house are many rooms, depending on your translation. I have no idea what the housing arrangement's going to look like. Kind of reminded of Sister Marlene Williams. We were talking about this one night years ago, and she said as long as she had 1 square foot to stand in, she was going to be fine. In heaven, that'll be just fine, but maybe it'll be mansions. The word itself technically is more of a abode, a residence, and probably a real good translation of what Jesus said is, in my Father's house, there's plenty of room. There's lots of room for you. So exactly what the dormitories are going to look like, I have no idea. It'll probably be closer to the Diva Lodge than it will some of the other camps, but who knows? So that's the mansion thing. Another question that comes up a lot is about what we're going to do in heaven. Some people even say, well, heaven sounds kind of boring, just to sit on the clouds and play harps. And that's the concept that some people have of heaven. The Bible doesn't really tell us anything about that. It doesn't say. It does say that his servants will worship him. Revelation 22:3, if you want to write that down, his servants will worship him. And Revelation 7:15 says that his servants will serve him. So there's going to be some kind of worship. We don't know if it's continual, or if we don't know if it's periodic, or we don't know how that's going to work. We're going to have the new heavens and the new earth, which I think will be a place to enjoy and explore and learn. But I don't know how the worship's going to work. But it's not going to be boring like some people think. Probably one of the most frequent questions we get about heaven is, will we know people? How's that going to work? Will we know our friends? Will we know our family? Marriage confuses people. In fact, we got a call just a couple of weeks ago from an elderly lady that had just lost her husband, and we happened to answer a question that day about, will there be marriage in heaven? And the Bible says there won't be marriage in heaven. Well, she was distraught. She called in and was upset about that. She just lost her husband, and she assumed that she would get to see him again, and they'd be a couple again. So this whole topic of what do we know? How's this going to work in heaven? Once again, the Bible doesn't say specifically, but I think we can get a few clues. Now let's talk about the marriage thing first, get that out of the way since I brought it up. Jesus was asked a question, a trap question, about somebody that had been married a lot of times and which husband would she have in heaven? Because the people asking, the Sadducees, didn't believe in the resurrection. And Jesus said, well, you don't understand. He said, there's no marriage in heaven. He said, angels don't marry, and there won't be any marriage in heaven. Okay, that doesn't mean there won't be any relationship. It means there won't be a need for marriage like there is here. The two purposes of marriage are companionship, to complete each other, and to procreate, to make more people. We don't need either of those in heaven. We're going to have the relationships. We're going to be complete. And so there, I think, surely there will be the relationship we had, but there won't be a marrying like we know it now or think about it now. Okay, now the rest of that answer will come when we talk about what we'll know in heaven. How will we recognize people, all of that. Here's kind of a key passage, Isaiah 65. If you want to turn to that, if you brought your books, Isaiah 65. Verse 17. And this is talking about the new heavens and the new earth. Isaiah is prophesying about it. Verse 17 of Isaiah 65 says, for behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former things shall not be remembered or come into mind. Okay, so something about the new heavens and the new earth, the former things will not be remembered or come into mind. Now, does that mean we won't remember anything about earth? Now, I think we go back a verse and we get a little more clue. Verse 16 says, so that he who blesses himself in the land shall bless himself by the God of truth, and he who takes an oath in the land shall swear by the God of truth, because the former troubles are forgotten and hidden in my eyes. For behold, I create a new heavens and a new earth. The former troubles, the bad things, at least, won't come to mind. Okay? And that's pretty much the only clue we get about what will we remember, what will we know. Isaiah said that the former things shall not be remembered or come into mind. Now, get over into Revelation 21, verse 4, and it gives us another clue about the same clue. It says, when we're in heaven, there'll be no tears, no death, no mourning, no crying, no pain. For, and here's the reason there'll be none of that, for the old order of things has passed away. Okay, so today, if you think about what we cry about, what we mourn about, what we have pain about, that order of things is going to be gone. Okay, so we won't have that. Now, how he's going to work what we remember of good or bad, I don't know. My answer to that is always the one who invented the brain can probably figure out how to operate the brain. If he wants all the bad stuff to go away, that'll be fine. We kind of do that already as humans. We forget bad things. Sometimes we bring them to mind too much, but in general, something that's horrible at the time, we tend to kind of forget how horrible it was later when things get better. And I think that relationship on earth, when we magnify it by what's earth and what's heaven, when it gets so good up there, we're not going to worry about the bad things of earth. Okay? So maybe Isaiah gives us a little clue that the former things won't be remembered, the former troubles won't be remembered or come into mind. We won't have any reason to, because all the tears and death and mourning and crying and pain are gone. Now, when I'm talking about what we know in heaven, I'm talking about the eternal heaven. I think there's a difference between the eternal heaven and the current heaven. I think we will remember things in the current heaven. I couldn't write a doctoral thesis on it, but I think we get enough clues that in the current heaven, we will remember things. We will know things about our life on earth, even the bad things. My clues for that are, number one, Luke 16. Luke 16, the story of the rich man and Lazarus who died, the beggar. And the rich man was aware, he was in torment, he was in the Hades, the place of the dead. He was aware that his brothers were still on earth. And he was aware, because of what had happened to him, that they were in trouble. Okay? So he asked Abraham if he could send somebody down there and warn them. And God said, no, you can't do that. But he was aware of what went on there. He also remembered his life. He remembered the things that he had done wrong. Okay, now he was in torment, not in the current heaven, but he remembered that much. As far as the current heaven and what we'll remember there, Revelation 6, verse 9 and 10 is interesting. Revelation 6, 9 and 10. In John's vision of heaven, he saw the martyrs, and this is the current heaven before the second coming, before the eternal heaven. We know because he saw a picture, a vision of those who had been martyred, and he said they were around the throne and asking and begging the Lord, how long will it be before our blood is avenged? Okay, so they're in the current heaven, and it had to be the current heaven because at the eternal heaven, all that will be avenged. So the martyrs remembered their time on earth. They remembered what happened to them, and they were asking how long it would be before all this gets set right. So from those two, maybe kind of small clues, but those two clues, I think in the current heaven we will remember things on earth. We'll remember what happened and how. And in the eternal heaven, somehow we will remember only good if we remember. Now, related to that, let me jump over to this one because we got asked this, we get asked a few times. Do people in the current heaven watch over us? Now, we say that all the time, don't we? We say, your daddy's watching. You know, when we do a funeral, we say at the end, we'll say something like that. We say, family, remember, you know that Grandpa's watching you. You know, he's concerned about what you do. Well, we talk like that, but we don't know that. We don't know if people in the current heaven are aware of what's going on here or not. We just don't know. The biggest place we get that from probably is Hebrews 12:1, where it talks about the cloud of witnesses. We read about all these people in the hall of faith in Hebrews 11, and then in Hebrews 12, verse 1, it says, since we have such a great cloud of witnesses, let's run the race. Okay? So sometimes we picture that as them all watching and they're witnessing what we're doing, and that's why we should live the right kind of life. Well, I don't think they're that kind of witnesses. Now, they may be. I'm just saying that verse doesn't prove it. I think it's talking about their lives are a witness to us of what faith does. Okay? We see their lives, that's a witness to us that living by faith is a good idea. They're great examples of faith. They're witnesses to us, not necessarily witnesses of us. We run the race because of their example. Okay. An example I thought of, if you go to a famous school that's got a rich athletic tradition, and you go into the area where the trophy cases are, and you see the Heisman trophies and this and that and all the things of what's happened at that school before, that's an incentive to you. That's a witness to you that great things happen here. You know, high school kids did this. College kids did this at this school. Okay, it doesn't mean they're watching you, although some of them may be, but it's a witness to you in that sense. If you were lucky enough, fortunate enough, and a few of you here were, to go to Wichita North High School, when you go into the trophies area, there's pictures and jerseys and stuff of Barry Sanders. Okay, if you're going to play football there and you walk past that every day and you say, man, look what happened here. Okay, that's a witness to you. So I think that's what Paul, or the writer of Hebrews, is talking about, is that they're witnesses in that sense. Whether they can look down and see us right now or not, I have no idea. It's fine with me if they can, and doesn't make a whole lot of difference if they can't, but I'm just saying I don't think the Bible says that. All right, what's time we got? Okay, back to knowing people. Are we going to know people? When we get there, will I recognize Sister Edna? Will I look across the eastern gate there and say, there's Edna? Yeah. Will that happen or not? We're not told. The Bible doesn't say that. The few times when somebody came back from the current heaven, they were recognizable. That's about the only clue we got. On the Mount of Transfiguration, Moses and Elijah, people knew who they were. Peter, James, and John knew. Now, I don't know if they got introduced. I don't know if they had name tags. I don't know how that worked. But it seems to say that they recognized them. They knew who they were. David, when his son died, his infant son, and he talked about it, he said all he could do then, he couldn't bring the son back, but he could go to him. Okay, so David assumed that he was going to know his son in heaven. And I think that's the best assumption. I think we will. I'm just saying the Bible doesn't exactly say that. The only other passage we got about that is when Saul asked the witch to bring back Samuel from the dead. Don't know if he really expected her to or not, but God sent him. And Samuel appeared and Saul recognized him. Okay, so how it's going to work in the current heaven and the eternal heaven, I don't know. Some people take the verse about we'll know as we're fully known. I think that's possibly what that means. 1 Corinthians 13:12 says, now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even if I has been fully known. I think he's talking more about the truth and knowing God and all that than he does about knowing everybody and every secret and all of that, which some people think. Okay, so those are the basic heaven questions I had. We got about 5 minutes left, so let's go to another piece of heaven that we get a lot of questions about, and it's about angels. People always asking about angels, want to know how that works. And do people become angels is one we get a lot. how the angels are organized, what they do, what they're like. Do they live on earth as men? We get all kinds of angel questions. So let's just kind of get the basics down here today, and then we'll maybe talk about it some more next week. The most important thing to know about angels is that angels are different than humans. They're a completely different order of creation. Humans don't become angels. Humans are humans that become heavenly spirits when we pass and then resurrected with our glorified body, but we're not going to be angels. We're still going to be separate. Angels, I think, were created first before everything else, and certainly before man. My only clue for that is Job 38:7. God told Job that the angels shouted for glory at the creation of the universe. When God created the universe, the angels shouted for joy, which, to my way of thinking, the angels had to be there. Okay, so I think they were created first. Then God did the Genesis thing, Genesis 1 thing, and at the end of those 6 days, he made man. Man is lower than the angels. Okay? And that's all we know. How that's going to work in heaven, I don't know. I don't know if we get promoted above the angels or we stay below them. I don't know. I don't think it matters a whole lot. But right now, we are made lower than the angels. Psalm 8:4-5 says that man was made a little lower than the angels. And then it also talks about Jesus, that he was made for a little while lower than the angels. So he gave up his glory and stepped down and became a human who was lower than the angels for a while. Okay. 2 minutes. What do we talk about? Okay, what do angels do? Let's see if we can squeeze that in real quick. They're spirits. They sometimes can appear as men, as humans. When I say men, because that's the only thing we're ever told about them. They're not told they ever appeared as women, but they appeared as humans. Not many times, but a few times. So we know that. And we know they can appear as ordinary men, and sometimes they appear as something greater than ordinary men. We're told sometimes that they, like the two at the tomb, appeared in dazzling array. They were shining. Okay. The ones that visited Abraham, the ones that visited Lot, they thought they were just men. Okay. So angels can take on human form for a while, and as far as we know, they may still be doing that. We're told to entertain strangers, be hospitable, because some people have entertained angels unaware. We don't know much about that concept or how it works, but since they, in the Old Testament, took the form of men, well, in the New Testament too, they very well may today also. One quick other thing, and then we'll quit. I think Luke 16:22 does give us another assignment of the angels. I think that when we die, angels come and escort our spirit to heaven. Okay, that's what happened to the beggar Lazarus. Said when the time came when the beggar died, the angels carried him to Abraham's side. Okay, so I think that's one duty that they have. And other than that, all we're told about them is they are around the throne of God. They worship God. They proclaim Him holy and all that. So we may work some more on angels next week, but we're out of time today. Take a break and visit with folks that you hadn't seen in a while, and thanks for coming today.